Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Flux. Today I'm back with another Season 1 guide, and today we're going to be going over Demo. We'll be going over a lot of similar stuff I went over for AF. I'm going to try to keep this video a little bit shorter than the AF one, but still try to go as in-depth as I can and like in detail. But the main things I'm going to go over are just like stats, talents for the hero trees, and then I'm going to try to do I'll do like a fast rotation demo in real time, and then I'll go back through it and kind of just explain what's going on. So yeah, we're gonna jump right into the video, guys. If you guys enjoy the video, if you guys find this video helpful, please leave a like on the video. Really helps me out a lot. Subscribe for more content. We are gonna be throwing down a lot of Warlock content for Season 1. Follow me on Twitch. I'll be streaming a lot of stuff over there, like keys and raid. Also, we have YouTube memberships active. If you guys don't know what that is, you can basically pay $5 a month to join the channel as a YouTube member, and you get access to some special perks. I'm still refining that system more or less, but if you guys are interested in supporting the channel a little bit more, that would be a great way to do it, and I would really, really appreciate it. So yeah, with all that stuff out of the way, let's jump right into the guide. Alright guys, so the first thing we will go over is stat prio. Now remember, stat prios are just a general kind of guidance. You should always be simming your character to find out like what stats are best for you at the moment. Especially early on in the season, you're not going to be worrying about stats a whole lot just because you're going to be upgrading all of your gear. So as you get eye level upgrades, you're just going to be slapping those on instantly. Doesn't matter what stats they have, just because you are always trying to get eye level first. Once you get to a point where you're starting to cap out on eye level, that's when you'll start worrying about min-maxing your stats a little bit more. And then so when you get to that point, basically what you're going to want to be looking for first is haste. So similar to AF, haste is going to help demo feel a lot smoother to play. It's going to make you be able to do everything a lot faster, such as set up your Tyrant ramps, set up your Implosion cycles, and just build and spend shards on Hand Gul'dan a lot faster. So after haste, there is basically a lot of very conflicting information regarding crit, mastery, and verse. So basically what I'm seeing is that crit and versatility have a little bit more of a higher priority after haste, and then mastery would be below those two. I don't think crit and verse are necessarily bad to have. Crit is pretty good, like it affects you and your demons. So it's good in pretty much every single scenario. Verse mostly affects you and your damage as opposed to your demons. So that would be stuff like Demon Bolt, Shadow Bolt, Hand Gul'dan, Doom, and then Mastery is basically just everything that pertains to your demons. So all of your Felguard's damage, your Dreadstalkers, your Charhound, your Felguard, your Tyrant, and Mastery also does include the demons from the Diabolist hero tree. The damage from your demons does make up a very, very large percentage and portion of your damage. So while I think crit and versatility are good, yeah, I don't think mastery is as low of a prio as maybe some of these other guides and information are making it out to be. Like to the point of where you would basically want little to no mastery at all. I don't think that's true at all. So I think in general for like single target, especially having a good mix of crit, mastery, and verse are going to give you guys pretty good results. Make sure you guys are always submit your character to see what any stat changes do. And then in AoE, I would definitely probably give more value to mastery over versatility. Because in AoE scenarios, especially, a large portion of your damage instead goes to your mastery versus your versatility. And that is because in AoE, most of your cleave and AoE damage gets attributed more to your pets than it does to you. In AoE, the only thing that you are really doing to cleave is Hand of Gul'dan and Doom if you are taking it. However, I think currently with the AoE and plus build we're running, we are just running the base Doom, and this does not do nearly as much damage as something like Doombrand did in Season 3 of Dragonflight. However, the damage that gets attributed to your pets is stuff like your Felguard and its cleave, your Dreadstalkers and their cleave, the Charhound and its cleave, all of your Implosion damage, stuff like Bile Scourge Bombers, and of course all of the demons from the Diabolist hero tree. The damage from all those demons and all those pets are going to make up a much, much larger portion of your AoE damage versus just Hand of Gul'dan and Doom. And remember guys, if you are planning to do any sort of high key pushing and potentially mythic raiding, you do not want to neglect versatility entirely because this stat is going to help give you a small bit of DR. It's not a huge bit of DR, but does help at times. So that is always something to keep in mind. So now that we have gone over stats a little bit, let's start jumping into the talents. So over on the class side of the tree, a lot of this stuff, and the reason why we're picking it is basically similar to like what I went over in my AF guide. Basically, you're taking a lot of this stuff just for pathing or it's throughput. You need to take all three of these capstones at the bottom. They are all very, very useful, and you do not want to miss any of them. I think potentially the only things you could maybe flex out are like this modifier on Dark Pact and potentially Fiendish Stride if you don't really need it. And instead you could take something like Lifeblood over here for some leech when you use a Hellstone, maybe Swift Artifice, or some DR on your port and gateway. But generally this is just going to be fine. Over in the Diabolist hero tree, we have 3 choice nodes. This one is basically never going to be taken because we just don't really play Howl of Terror. So you just kind of default to this one, which makes it so that your port always has the benefit of Soulburn, which is pretty nice. This middle choice node is just the throughput option, and I believe this one is just simming better right now. And then over here is a defensive option. So this one causes your Unending Resolve to heal you for 30% over 10 seconds. Not necessarily bad, but Unending Resolve has a really long cooldown, so not really a whole lot of value. The thing is, this one also affects Unending Resolve. It causes your Unending Resolve to grant you a Soul Leech equal to 10% of your maximum health, and also increases the maximum amount of Soul Leech by 10%. Personally, I just think this one is a little more useful because it essentially just gets you a little bit of extra max health while you have Unending Resolve active, versus this one which just heals you, and generally you're just not going to need healing while your wall is up because you have access to stuff like Hellstone. So I think this one just gets a little more value. And then over on the spec side of the tree, I believe this is just the highest simming single target build for demo right now. The nice thing about this build is that it works for both Diabolist and Soul Harvester. So no matter what hero tree you're playing, you're pretty much just going to be playing this. And this is for a pure single target fight. You can potentially swap out Felguard for Annihilin training if you don't really like having to use Felguard. They are very, very, very close in overall sim DPS, so this is kind of just like a preference thing, up to you. I kind of like Felguard, so I'm probably going to be playing with this. But if it gets too wonky and causes like ramping my Tyrant to be a little annoying, I might just swap to this one. And then over for the Soul Harvester hero tree, if you do want to play Soul Harvester, this is what it would look like. Basically, this is the defensive option. This one is a little more valuable in my opinion. Gives you access to something you don't have already. This one just modifies Hellstone to always give you the effect of Soulburn. This one gives your Dark Pact an extra 50% shield, which is pretty nice. This is the DPS option. Right now, this one is just simming higher. And then this is the utility option for raid. Both of these are kind of equal value, so you can kind of just pick whatever one you want. So as of right now, for pure single target, Diabolist and Soul Harvester are simming very, very, very close, at least for me. I'll go show you guys the sims right now. They are literally within like about 1,000 DPS of each other. So we'll go look at the sims right now. Alright guys, so this is my Diabolist single target sim. Right now I am simming at 697,000. And then this is my Soul Harvester single target sim. Right now I'm simming at 698,000. So these are very, very close, and I think it's reasonable to say that you'd probably get the best results right now with whichever one of these 2 hero trees you feel more comfortable playing with. So now I'm going to go over the talent build for something like a raid fight where you have more than one single target to attack. This would be for like something like a council style boss fight, or like a very extended 2-target boss fight where you constantly have 2 things to hit. In that style of fight, you'd probably want to run this talent build right here. So with this talent build, what we're doing is we're just dropping a lot of our more pure single target stuff, like imp damage, all this doom stuff down here, and we're instead taking more stuff that buffs our cleave damage, like extra Felguard damage, extra Dreadstalker damage, and then more implosion damage. And again, I would only run this on a fight that has extended multiple target cleave. If you have a boss fight that is like, I'd say 80% single target, and you have intermittent ad spawning that die pretty fast. For example, I would say something like similar to Laridar from Amirjasil. I would definitely run the other build because on that style of fight, your single target is going to be a lot more important than being able to pad onto the stuff that spawns intermittently. And the only exception to that is if those ads that spawn intermittently live for like very, very, very long periods of time, which generally isn't the case. So for this talent build, we'll go take a look at the sims right now. Alright, so with the Cleave build, Diabolist right now is simming a little bit higher for both like your single target damage profile and like your Cleave damage profile. So over here we have the Diabolist sim. This is a pure single target, so this gives you an idea of your single target damage profile with the Cleave build. We're sitting at 670k. Over here we have the Soul Harvester single target sim with the Cleave build, and we're at 654, so a little bit less. There's a big chunk there. And then over here is a two target sim with the same Cleave build. This is with Diabolus, so we're at 967. And then this is another two target sim with the Cleave build, and we are using Soul Harvester, and this one's at 879. So just in general, for any type of Cleave or multi-target, Diabolus is going to be simming a little bit better than Soul Harvester. Alright guys, so I'm going to jump into the M+ talents now. So over on the class side of the tree, basically we have, I would say, two flex points kinda. Which would be Demonic Circle and this Dark Pact modifier. Everything else we're more or less going to need for throughput or just pathing to get over to other stuff. You need Shadow Fury and M+. This is your only AoE stop. It's very, very important to have. The reason you might not need Circle all the time is just because in some dungeons, like you literally just might not need Circle at all. Like you probably will ever barely press it. And it would be okay to drop it at that point. So some other good, decent flex options would be Fiendish Stride if you want. Banish, if you need this for like a boss strat where you're trying to CC and add, this is a very useful ability. Dark Fury, just to modify Shadow Fury a little bit and reduce its cooldown, which is pretty nice. The Dark Pact modifier, which is also really nice, just to boost one of your defensives. And then Amplify Curse with Curse of Tongues is very, very nice for specific bosses or trash that have really annoying casts. So those are kind of some of your flex options that you can kind of decide on a dungeon by dungeon basis. Diabolist doesn't really change ever with any of the different trees, so we're always going to be running this pretty much. And then over on the spec side of the tree, this is what I'm going to recommend you guys play. This is a build I tried a little bit on beta with some playtesting. I'll go show you guys the sims in a sec, but basically this build gets you a pretty good balance between like single target and AoE. There are a couple talents you can swap around if you want to get a little more AoE versus a little more single target, and we'll go look at some sims right now. So I have sims pulled up here for a couple different builds. The build I am showing you guys right now is these two right here. So this is basically what your single target damage would look like. This is a 1 minute, a one boss 4-minute sim, and then this is what your AoE would look like with that build. So if you guys wanted to take more AoE, what you would basically do is swap to this build right here. This build gets you a little bit more AoE at the cost of a little bit of single target. So as you guys can see, my AoE goes up in the AoE sim, and then my single target goes down in the single target sim. And basically what you change for that build is you just drop Imp Mother to take Felguard and Flame Touched. So that basically makes it so you have to track your Felguard now and use it in your ramp. So a little bit more added complexity for a little bit more AoE at the cost of a little bit of single target. And then if we default back to this build right now, if you wanted to instead take a little bit more single target versus a slight AoE loss, you would swap to this build right here. So this is the AoE for this build, and this is the AoE for this build. So you go down a little bit, and then this is a single target for this build, and then this is the single target for this build. So you go up a little bit. Personally, when comparing these for me, the single target loss is very, very slight, so it's not really that bad. And then you get a very decent chunk of AoE. So that's why I think this build is just a little bit better. But basically for this build, what you would do instead is you would drop this talent right here, Impending Doom, for Flame Touched, and that would take you over to this build. And if for whatever reason you like really just do not want to play Doom and you don't like the playstyle, I think this build over here is probably going to get you, let's say, the best results. But just keep in mind that if you drop Doom, you are going to be losing a fair bit of AoE potential. So you guys can see going from having Doom to not having Doom, there is about 140k overall AoE DPS loss. But your single target's still pretty decent. So that is a thing to keep in mind. And basically, if you want to drop Doom, you just drop Doom, and then you take Flame Touch and Felguard, and that's what you would run there. So all those builds I just showed you guys outside of maybe like the non-Doom build are pretty close to each other, like they're very much within margin of each other. So it could be like a, you switch the build for depending on the dungeon type thing, or maybe just based on preference, and that'll get you the best results. And then as far as the hero trees go, Diabolist is just ahead of Soul Harvester right now in dungeons, in both AoE and single target. There's not really a reason you would ever play Soul Harvester in dungeons, so we're just going to be playing Diabolist pretty much. Alright guys, so now that we've gone over the more single target oriented talent builds, like the talent builds you'd probably end up playing for Raid, we'll get into the single target rotation. And I'll also go over the minor changes that you want to be doing if you're playing the cleave build or just if you're trying to cleave in general. So very quick before we get into any type of Prio system type stuff or rotational stuff, I just want to go over two of the concepts that you need to be familiar with in order to succeed at demo. Demo is honestly, in my opinion, a very straightforward spec once you learn how to ramp your Tyrant and once you learn how to do implosion cycles. Once you learn those two things, the spec kind of just plays itself. More or less, you're just pressing your demons on cooldown, and then you are just building and spending on hand to Gul'dan in between all that. So the first thing I'll go over is what is the Tyrant ramp and how do we do it. So basically, the Tyrant ramp is whenever you have your Tyrant up or coming off cooldown soon, and you see that you have your Dreadstalkers available or coming off cooldown soon, your Charhound slash Vilefiend slash Gloomhound available or coming off cooldown soon, and your Felguard if it is available slash coming off cooldown soon. So basically what we want to do with the Tyrant ramp is we want to get our 3 big demon button abilities out. We want to generate a few imps while we're doing all that, and then once we have all that stuff out and we have our imps out, at that point you're going to want to send Tyrant to extend the timer on all those demons. And by doing that, we're getting a lot of extra damage out of those demons because they are going to be staying out for a longer period of time. So they're going to be hitting stuff longer and doing more damage. And all those demons are also getting their damage buffed by Tyrant while it's out. And this is kind of just one of the fundamental basics of demo. If you mess this up, you're going to be losing a lot of damage. And if you do this really well, you're going to be doing as much damage as you should be doing. So I'll go ahead and show you guys what a Tyrant ramp looks like. If you were basically just starting out a pool and you had all your CDs up and everything. What I'm going to do is just do this very fast, and then I'll go back to it a little bit slower and kind of explain what's going on. Alright guys, so I'm going to go through it in a little bit slower motion and kind of explain what's going on. So basically, before you pull, you want to press power siphon just to get some cores for your ramp to make things a little bit faster. You're basically going to use these to generate some imps with Hand Guldans a lot faster than you normally would by just having to spam Shadow Bolt. So once you press power siphon, you're going to precast a Shadow Bolt. What that's going to do is put you at 4 shards. And then as soon as your Felguard jumps in, he's going to use Soul Strike to get you 5 shards. So immediately after that, you will be at 5 shards and you could start doing your other stuff. So that's why I Shadow Bolt immediately and then use Grimoire Felguard. You can see my Felguard used his Soul Strike already, so I should go back up to 4 shards right now. The reason I use Felguard first is out of these 3 demons, it has the longest available timer. So you want to press the one that has the longest available timer first, because like if, for instance, I press Dreadstalkers first and they had the shortest available timer, it gives me less available time to finish all my ramp stuff. So by pressing this first with the longest available timer, I now have basically 15 to 16 seconds to do all my ramp stuff and press Tyrant before this expires. So we press Felguard first. You see I go back up to 4 shards here. After that, I'm going to press Shadow Bolt to go back up to 5. Into Charhound. This has the next longest timer out of these 3, so we press this second. And then after that, we're going to Shadow Bolt back up to 5. Basically, what you're doing by delaying Dreadstalkers to the end also is you are fishing for a proc of this right here, Demonic Calling. You're fishing for this proc to make sure that your Dreadstalkers have no Soul Shard cost. Sometimes you get lucky with this, sometimes you don't, and that's just kind of the way it goes. You'll see right here I did get lucky with it, so I get to keep my 5 shards, and I get to start dumping into some hands to generating some imps. And we are using this last, like I mentioned, 2 fish for the demonic calling proc, but also because this has the shortest timer out of all 3 of these demons. So we have our 3 big demons out. At this point, we're just going to start dumping into hand. And at this point, we can use our cores to just quickly spend and generate hands. So we go hand into core, hand into hand there. I did a double hand there because I see here my Felguard is about to run out, and I don't think I have enough time to do a hand into a core, back into another hand. So I'm just going to full dump, generate as many imps as I can, and then send Tyrant. And you'll see there I caught everything. We have 9 imps, which is pretty decent. And once your Tyrant is out, you're just going to start building and spending into Hand of Gul'dan as much as possible. And that is basically how you would do a Tyrant ramp on pull. Alright guys, so now we are going to get into implosions and basically how to set up and execute them. This is another really important thing you need to know if you want to succeed at demo. So basically just going to explain the way I learned this to you guys and the way that it made sense for me when I was learning it. So I have some gameplay here of me like just going through my AoE rotation a little bit. And I'll let it play and kind of explain how I'm setting up the implosions, like as different things are happening and coming up and different procs are happening. The main idea with implosion is whenever you want to start an implosion, you want to be at like pretty much 4 or 5 shards. You can do this with and without demonic core procs. It doesn't matter. Basically, the main idea is you want to try to get at least three shard Hand of Gul'dans out. Which is basically going to give you 9 imps total. You want to get those 3 out before that first set of imps you spawn expires. Because if that first set of imps you spawn expires, that's basically some of your implosion damage gone. So this whole process is just you setting up a good amount of imps that are ready to be imploded, and then you implode them, which is going to give you all that AoE damage. Also, another important thing to mention, like the 9 imps is not really like a quote-unquote hard rule. It is possible for you, like with really, really good procs, to maybe get like up to 12 imps in an implosion or even more. And that's kind of like where stuff like these weak auras that have the imps and their timers help a little bit. But definitely as you play through the spec a little bit more and more, you'll just get that muscle memory down and you'll get the hang of it and you'll kind of know like how much time you have in between everything to implode before you start losing your imps. Alright guys, so now we're going to get into some implosion examples. So this is an example of an implosion right here. I have 5 shards with 2 cores. I'm just going to spend some shards on hand, basically use all my cores. Once I'm out of cores and shards, I'm going to wait a little bit and I'm going to use Implosion. So I go hand into core, into hand, into core, into hand again. So at this point, I am done sending hands pretty much. So I'm not going to implode right away after that last hand. And the reason you don't want to do that is because you want your imps to finish spawning. If your imps don't finish spawning, the imps that didn't spawn will not be included in that implosion damage. And they will just kind of be awkwardly sitting there around you. So you're missing some AoE damage, and then let's say you're just gonna say whatever and implode right again right after you imploded. That's just like really, really inefficient. So it's better to just wait a couple seconds after that last hand to guarantee everything's gonna spawn, everything's gonna have enough time to spawn, and then after that point you implode, and that guarantees you're gonna get all of your AoE damage in that implosion. So in this example, I use Infernal Bolt right after that last hand. All my imps had spawned, and then I use Implosion right now, and I believe that was like 10 imps, so that's a pretty decent Implosion. So right after that Implosion setup, I'm going to go right back into another Implosion setup. So we're going to build back to 5. I'm at 5 now with 1 core, so I can start setting up another Implosion. And I have my dogs coming off cooldown soon, so I do want to make sure I am pressing this as close to on cooldown as possible. So I go hand into core, back into hand again, to Shadow Bolt, into hand. After this, I'm going to send my dogs, and then after my dogs, I'm going to implode because all the imps should have spawned by the time the GCD comes back after the dog cast goes off. So this is a good example to show you guys like what happens if you have some procs come up during your implosion setup, as well as your dogs coming up like somewhere in between them. So during this implosion cycle, I'm going to have my dogs coming up. I'm going to have the Pit Lord from the Diabolist tree coming up. And between all that, I'm going to be spawning some imps and then sending an implosion at the end with all of the extra imps and stuff I got from the procs. So we're going to start out here with 5 shards, and I'm going to go send a Hand of Gul'dan back into a core. So you see that Pit Lord will proc on my next Hand of Gul'dan, so I'm going to send Hand of Gul'dan again back into a core. So right now I'm going to send Ruination, which is basically going to be like a free Hand of Gul'dan, so I will still have 3 shards into dogs. And then after I send my dogs, I see I still have a little bit of time on that first set of imps I spawned. So I can just use like another global just to make sure all this stuff spawns, and then I'm going to send it all to get a nice fat 13 imp implosion. So this is like another good example of something useful that you might learn. So after this ruination and the dogs, I am still going to have shards left over. The reason I'm not going to send these shards immediately is because the timer on these first set of imps is getting really close to running out. And remember, when you are planning to implode, you do not want to send implode immediately. So while I might have time right now to send like another hand, I don't think I'll have time to send another hand and then like waste a global waiting for my imps to spawn right after. If I do that, I'm going to run the risk of losing all of these imps right here. And it's very likely I am going to lose all these imps because I just don't think I would have enough time for that. So instead of trying to go for the extra hand, I'm just going to start building towards my next implosion setup and guarantee I get all of these imps in this current implosion setup. So that's just another little bit of useful information to know, and that's kind of stuff you'll pick up as you get more familiar with the spec and get more practice with it. Alright, so now that we've gone over some of the more fundamental and basic concepts, it'll help you guys understand a little bit more what I'm doing as I am going through the rotation stuff and the Prio system. So for single target, basically the Prio system is going to look something like whenever your Tyrant is available or becoming available soon, you want to start ramping for it and sending all the demons and stuff with it. Immediately after you finish your ramp, you're going to want to send Demonic Strength. You want to send this at that point in time because that is when your Felguard will be damage boosted by Tyrant. And then basically, you're going to press that every time after your Tyrant. Like it's pretty much just going to line up perfectly with Tyrant's cooldown. After that, your next highest priority is going to be just to send your other demons on cooldown, like your Dreadstalkers, Charhound, Vilefiend, Gloomhound, and your Grimoire Felguard. After that, when you are playing Diabolist, you're going to want to make sure you do not waste your Ruination and Infernal Bolt procs. It'll be pretty easy to not waste them on single target. You're kind of just going to do them as you're doing your rotation. It's mostly like a thing in like AoE or M+. As far as the demons that you summon from Diabolist, you don't really have to play around them too much. You're more or less just going to passively summon them as you are doing your rotation. And then after that, you're basically just going to be building shards with Demon Bolt and Shadow Bolt. Make sure to try to use Power Siphon on cooldown just to give you a little bit more Demon Bolts and cores. And then you're just going to be spending shards on Hand of Gul'dan. Alright, so now I'm going to do a demo of the single target rotation with Diabolist. I'll just go through it for a little bit, and then we will go back slower, and I will kind of explain what's going on in more detail. Alright guys, so now we will go over the rotation with a little bit more of an explanation. So to start out, we're going to do the Tyrant ramp, just like how I did before, where we're going to precast Power Siphon into Shadow Bolt, into Felguard, into Vile Fiend, into Dreadstalkers. So this one was kind of funky because I think I got Soul Conduit refunds on a bunch of stuff. Yeah, so I got a refund on my Grimoire, so it kind of threw me off because I did not need to cast that extra Shadow Bolt. The Felguard went in and Soul Strike, so I went up to 5. And I got another immediate refund off Vile Fiend, which also threw me off, because as you can see here, I'm already going into a Shadow Bolt. So instead I could just go into Dreadstalkers, into Core, into Hand, into Core, into Hand, into Tyrant. Follow that up immediately with Demonic Strength, and then I'm just going to start building and spending shards on hand. As soon as my dogs come off cooldown, I'm going to want to press them. Use Power Siphon on cooldown. Just building and spending, using my Infernal Bolt. Making sure I use my Charhound on cooldown. Just going back into building and spending. Using my procs as they come up. Trying to make sure I don't overcap on shards. That's probably the big thing to do in like this middle, like kind of quote unquote filler phase, is just to make sure you don't overcap on shards. And you want to be tracking the Soul Strike cooldown to do that. That'll help you out a lot. So we're just going to continue to build and spend. So big thing to note at this point in the rotation, Tyrant is coming off cooldown soon. So essentially at this point, I know that my next Vile Fiend and Dreadstalkers are going to go into the ramp for Tyrant. So whenever I cast these two next, I do not want to waste them. I want to make sure I can catch their cooldown with Tyrant and send it at that point. It's basically like the mini ramp if you're playing with Felguard. And you can cast these earlier than this because they have a duration. So I'm basically going to try to press this pretty soon, like right now. I have dogs available. Just going to set up some imps here. Use Ruination, and then I'm just going to barely be able to catch these. So I'm barely going to catch these, and I have about 14 imps, 15 imps. That is a pretty juicy Tyrant. So at this point, we're basically just going to go right back into building and spending, using our demons on cooldown, trying not to overcap shards, and like literally just rinse and repeat. So like literally, it's basically like how I told you guys, like the entire rotation is more or less just knowing how to ramp your Tyrant. And then all the other stuff in between is very, very, very straightforward. Just press your stuff on cooldown and then build and spend. I'll fast forward a little bit so you guys can see like what the second ramp looks like with Felguard as it's coming off cooldown pretty soon. So right here I see my Felguard is off cooldown. I'm not going to want to press this yet because I believe the duration for this is like 16 seconds. So ideally, you do not want to press this until the cooldown on Tyrant is about 16 seconds or less. Just to give yourself a little bit of wiggle room and like buffer, you ideally want to send this when this has like about 13 to 14 seconds left on its cooldown. And then I'll give you like about a little 2 to 3 second buffer. You don't want to send this exactly when this has 16 seconds left because this will come up as soon as this is expiring and you're not going to be able to catch it. So I'm waiting a little bit to start my ramp. More or less just waiting for Vile Fiend to get closer to coming off cooldown as well. So the big thing to note is during this time I did not hold my Dreadstalkers because Dreadstalkers have a very, very short cooldown. This will come up before this is even off cooldown again. So you definitely don't want to hold on to these. If you can, just send them. They have a 20-second cooldown. They will come up with 4 seconds left on this cooldown. That's more than enough time. If you just sit on those for like 30 seconds, it's a very big damage loss. So I think at this point I'm ready to start ramping. I got 9 seconds left. So I'm going to send my Felguard. I'm going to go into Charhound, back into Shadowbolt. I'm just going to start sending hands because Dreadstalkers are not off cooldown yet. This is coming off cooldown soon, but the thing to note is I still have 10 seconds left of ramp if I want. So there's no need to panic and rush. Don't really pay attention to this timer as much as you are paying attention to this timer, because this is the main timer you are worried about. So I still have some time to build and spend some hands. I have time to send one more hand. I'm going to catch all these cooldowns with Tyrant, and then we're going to Demonic Shrink right after, and then just go right back into building and spending on all our other stuff. And that is pretty much the single target rotation, guys. Alright guys, so for Soul Harvester single target, I'm not really going to do a demo, and the main reason for that is the single target rotation is literally identical and in fact easier in my opinion, just because with Soul Harvester you don't have all these extra procs from the demons in the Diabolist tree. So Soul Harvester literally has no reactive procs that you have to worry about. Like, it just basically passively does damage for you while you're performing your normal rotation. The only thing that changes is that Tyrant now gives you 3 shards. So basically, when you send Tyrant, you do not want to be at 3 or more shards. You want to be at 2 or less shards so that you do not overcap shards. And that is literally the only change. Everything else is basically identical. Alright guys, so now we are going to be able to get into the AoE rotation and the cleaves type stuff. So for like the AoE / cleave rotation, again, it is very, very, very similar to the single target rotation. The only thing is that you now have to make sure you are imploding your imps, and they do not expire. And remember, Implosion is only stacked AoE. So if your targets are very, very, very spread out, you definitely do not want to implode. That's going to be very, very bad. So you either wait for them to get stacked, or if they're literally just all entirely spread out, you kind of just have to deal with it and don't even bother imploding. And then the last thing to keep in mind with the AoE rotation, if you are talented into Doom, which you should be since it is an AoE gain, you want to be spreading Doom to different targets using your demonic core procs. Alright guys, so I already went over like the basics of imploding and like the basic idea of how you want to set up implosions in like a previous section. So if you want to see that in a little bit more detail, go back and check that section. But basically what I'm going to do is just do the AoE rotation for a little bit right now on these dummies, and then I will go back a little bit slower and explain what's going on. Alright guys, so now we are going to go through the AoE rotation. I did a little bit slower, and I'll kind of explain things that I'm doing. So to start out, we are going to want to power siphon as usual. This would be like as you are running to the pack or your tank's gathering and stuff, if it's up. Start out with Shadow Bolt. As usual, your Felguard will go in and give you 5 shards with Soul Strike. Right after that, you're going to start immediately casting Charhound, and then Shadow Bolt again back into Dreadstalkers. With this M plus build, we don't have Felguard, so we don't need to worry about it at all. So after we do that, we are going to build back up and then start casting some hands for some imps. And then once we get all our hands out, we are going to Tyrant and then immediately hit Demonic Strength. And then just kind of start building shards again, using our procs, making sure we're using Dreadstalkers on cooldown. And then after all your building and spending, you are going to want to send all those wild imps that you had before they start expiring towards the end of your Tyrant, like I did right here. So I had 20 imps around the end of my Tyrant, and I just sent them all in for that big AoE damage. And then we basically just go back into our demons on cooldown, and I'm going to start setting up some implosions. So right there we had a 3-handed Gul'dan implosion, and then I just send them all in at the end. So I'm going to set up another implosion right here. I have 4 cores, 5 shards, so I'm just going to hand into a core, hand into a core, hand into one more core, wait a little bit, and then I'm going to implode. Right after that, my Dreadstalkers are off cooldown, so I'm going to use them. And then I'm going to build for another implosion right now. So this is technically my first hand, this Ruination. This is my second hand. This is my third hand. And we are going to implode. I see my Vile Fiend is off cooldown, or Charhound, and Tyrant is coming up soon, so I want to start ramping for Tyrant. So I use Charhound, build some shards, use my Dreadstalkers. Now I'm going to build up some hands for Tyrant. We got 3 hands off, and then I'm going to Tyrant, and then Demonic Strength, as usual, right after Tyrant. And now I'm just going to start building up some imps while Tyrant is active to get a nice big implosion after Tyrant ends. So this will be about the time I want to implode right there. And then I'm just going to use my demon on cooldown, and then I'm going to build for another implosion right now. So Ruination would be my first hand. I casted a second hand there. I used my dogs on cooldown. This is my third hand. My fourth hand, I had really good procs with this one, so I was able to get 4 hands out. And this is my first set of imps. They're still up. And then I'm going to implode right now. Also, like I haven't really mentioned this that much, but you'll see like as I'm doing all this stuff, I'm making sure to swap targets and spread out my dooms with my cores. So right here, I'm just going to try to set up another implosion, making sure I am spreading my dooms out. And that is basically the rotation you're going to want to do in any type of multi-target situation. Alright guys, so now I'm going to go over some like minor optimization tips for demo that you might use in like an M plus scenario. So the first one is going to be mostly related to the Diabolist tree. So as you're playing through Diabolist, you're going to get procs for demons. And a big thing to note about these procs is you can hold on to them for a long period of time. So for instance right here, let's say this pack is about to die right now and I have this proc available to me. These procs last for 1 minute, by the way. So if this pack is going to die right now, there's literally no reason to send this because you're just going to waste damage on stuff that's already dead or dying. Instead, just hold this and run it into the next pack, and you'll have this available immediately as you get into the pack. I'd say it's less important for Overlord and very important for stuff like Pit Lord, because if you send this, like for example, I'll show you guys. If you send like Pit Lord as the pack is dying, your Ruination proc has a much shorter timer than the actual Pit Lord. I don't know if this is Pit Lord, this is Mother of Chaos. This is pretty good here too. So you'll see Infernal Bolt only has like a 20-second timer, and you don't want to waste this proc either, similar to Ruination. So if you send like Mother of Chaos as that pack's dying, and you have this proc right here, and you're walking and walking and walking and walking for 20 seconds, you're just going to waste that proc and it's gone. And you basically just wasted 3 free shards. So we have Hitlord now, same thing here. Ruination has a 20-second timer. If you send Pit Lord at the end of the pack and you're just walking and walking and walking and walking, and you waste this Ruination proc, that is really bad. Ruination does a lot of your AoE damage. It's a free hand Gul'dan, and it summons 3 imps for you. So you do not want to waste those. So it's kind of like the same concept with Implosion, where you don't want to waste your imps as stuff is dying. So basically, I have some gameplay here from like beta. So right here, I'm sending my Tyrant, and as you guys can see, all this stuff is getting close to dead. So basically, while I'm building up this Tyrant, I'm going to be building up a whole bunch of imps. However, I don't want to just panic and implode right now because I'm going to waste a lot of AoE damage because stuff is just going to be dead. So instead, what you want to do is just keep building, and then as stuff is dying, you carry these imps over into the next pack. Basically, as you get into the next pack, what you're going to do is you're just going to send Dreadstalkers immediately. What that's going to do is apply the damage debuff on the enemies that makes them take increased Shadow Flame damage. And then after you use Dreadstalkers first, you're immediately going to implode right after that. So in this specific example, the next pack we went over to was just a single target mob. So obviously in this case, I'm not going to implode. However, if this was like a really big AoE pack, you would just Dreadstalkers and then immediately implode all these imps you had left over from your Tyrant. And it doesn't even need to be like just when you do Tyrant. This is like just in general. If you're nearing the end of the pack and you have a large amount of imps build up, you just generally want to save them and run them into the next pack. And the only time you would ever not want to try and run your imps into the next pack is if the next pack you'll be fighting will not be for like a very long time. So for example, if you're going to be running for a while and the next pack won't be for a while, or if there's some RP and you're going to have to wait for a little bit, your imps will naturally start to despawn out of combat. So if you're not going to be fighting for a very long period of time, it makes sense to just implode them. Even if the stuff is dying, even if like you're fighting a single target, just implode the imps, otherwise you're going to waste all that damage. Alright guys, so I think that is going to conclude the demo guide. Hopefully I went over everything. I think I went over everything. So I hope you guys learned something useful from this video. I hope it helped you guys out. If it did help you guys out, as always, please leave a like on the video. Let me know in the comments. It's always great to read those comments. Please consider subscribing. It is free for you, and it goes a very long way to support me and my channel and help me keep posting more videos. Go leave a follow on my Twitch. Consider joining my YouTube membership to get a little bit of extra perks and help support the channel a little bit more. Also, feel free to join my Discord channel. I have a bunch of helpful stuff and information linked in there, and there's also a bunch of people in there to talk to and ask questions. I am planning to still drop a Destro guide, so be on the lookout for that. And other than that, guys, I will see you all in the next video, so take it easy.